It's time for Verbal Tap, where we are officially launching a Miss Cleo-like service that you'll be able to find on the after hours of MSNBC. So they get 3 a.m. to 3:31 a.m. Raph and I will be there predicting the future. It's time for Verbal Tap, the show that proves fighting's way easier to predict when you're outside the cage. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, of course, Raph Esparza. Raph, how are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm heartbroken.
Because of No Fight Island?
Oh, yes, of course. Kev, we were blindsided by this news. How dare us not have
Was there
called
another
this?
reason you were heartbroken? Because I had an Indian food order not get delivered last night, and I would describe myself as semi-heartbroken still.
I would tell you this. I would tell you that to the people who are very angry and very sad, I don't know how you didn't see this as an inevitable outcome. Like, people are offended that the California governor and ESPN and Disney somehow were not for the idea of doing this without any idea how it was going to work.
And there's multiple reasons Dana announced that he felt confident he could host the fights. For one, his sweet pea in the Oval Office told him he could.
Mm-hmm.
And it turns out he couldn't. Because, well, I guess you could try and host it at the White House. We haven't had an MMA fight on the front lawn since Teddy.
True.
So that'd be fun.
The Rose Garden.
Great security already. And you know the fighters would jump at it. But he's still missing the point, which is, and not to get bloviating here, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Colbert, Sam, they're all doing something different because of the current environment. Dana wasn't trying to do anything different, as we outlined prophetically in the podcast prior to this one. He was trying to do the exact same thing. Okay, just no fucking people. It's like, yeah, but nothing about the way you host fights currently. This isn't a grappling match. Like, you have 3 cornermen, you have a nurse by your side putting Vaseline on you while you're bleeding. This is a gross contact bleeding sport, and no one wants to do it right now. So he didn't even get it off the ground, from my understanding, right?
Well,
he didn't get further than announcing it.
Au contraire, the fighters wanted to do it. Because what we've learned in this pandemic, unfortunately, not only are they poor and need the money. I mean, Jacare was like, listen, I don't want to do this, but I need me some money because I want to provide for my family. You know, there are a lot of go-getters who want to get back to what normalcy is. We all agree this sucks. None of us are really, truly enjoying this. However, it has brought out the babiest and the whiniest of sports fans who make no logical sense. And I'm not saying they did before, but really their entire argument is coming down to this. But I want my sports. I want my sports. I want now. And what it really comes down to for people like us is, yo, we miss sports too. Just chill the fuck out. Let's just wait it out and make sure if somebody is going to put on a sport, maybe, just maybe, we should know how that works, because there's going to be a lot of logistical nightmares to it. Kev, we famously talked about the fact that the WWE was going on in a sport which has predetermined outcomes. And guess what happened? Guess what they found out?
It's a little harder than it looks.
Well, not just it's harder than it looks, but an on-screen talent, not a wrestler, tested positive for COVID-19.
Oh, shit.
This is an organization that has famously said we are going to press on and we're going to take every precaution possible. And yet they had one person test positive, and it's an on-air personality. So they wouldn't say who it was, but if they're not a wrestler, you can do the math on most of those people. Now you have to ask yourself, even though they're all socially distanced, what if one of those people decided, uh-oh, yikes, I did get really close to somebody else? It could shut the whole thing down. Now you look over at California, people are mad at Newsom for stepping in. Well, you know what happens? when you don't explain how you're going to do it, how you're going to keep people safe, and you aren't making any exceptions for any other sport, and yet you're boasting about it over on the side and not providing the details as to how it's going to be safe. When they were asking Dana, where is it? He's like, oh, it's going to be on ESPN. Yeah, take that. It's a dumb answer.
If you
And
go
guess what?
back to your and I's conversation when he signed with ESPN, we were like, this will have ramifications for Dana's vision.
Right.
This is one of
Right.
those many examples that it has had a ramification for Dana's vision because they are a real sports organization. And taking this really, they're not airing the NBA, mofos. They're not going to send some poor sap crew to Fight Island out in Dana's post-apocalyptic world. That's not happening.
Now, here's an interesting element to it all. When it got canceled, Dana had to eat crow. And I'm not saying I've enjoyed a lot of things during this whole scenario, but I enjoyed the fuck out of that. And he's got a lot of sympathy from people who miss sports saying, you know what, boss, at least you tried. Well, not only did he try, but he was talking shit, saying that the coronavirus isn't real, that everybody's a giant pussy. And guess what? You have to eat crow because you were trying to make something happen without really figuring out how it was harmful to others or the potential harm it could have. And if you did consider it, you were like, well, fuck that, which has famously proved not to be a very smart thing. Kev, can you tell me your reaction when you discovered that the things you said specifically on the show came to light?
It's always a little scary, but you and I frequently have had a niche for understanding the art of the Dana lately, and he has different levels of announcement. And this one had level 5 shadiness. This one had level 5. John Jones is fine. His career's good. It was right in that range for anyone who's curious. This was very hastily announced, and he is welcome to deflect blame to Gavin Newsom, like if that helps him, the governor of California. But governors of any state aren't going to let this happen. Like he can try Florida, and that would be my recommendation. The difficulty is getting your fighters, staff, and production there. That's why the idea of like a Fight Island sounded kind of fun. It had a McHale's Navy like intrigue to me. It was like, I love Gilligan's Island. I love a lot of things with islands. Love Lost. This felt like a version of that. We're just gonna have a beachside match today. It's Jacare versus Damian Maia. Buckle in. Sounds awesome. Not gonna happen. There's a global pandemic going on. And until he was like, here's how this is going to go and this is going to be, it was ridiculous. And frankly, if he wants to have these fights, I will outline his only possible path. He gets 2 fighters that he really feels passionate about. He gets his own fucking camera and he films it. That's the only way he's going to be able to host an event. Otherwise, it's going to be very quiet because you can only blame governors once for this type of mess. It didn't go great this time. Everybody was like, yeah, fucking told you, Dana.
And those who were sad that this happened, because again, we have whiny sports fans who were like, man, fuck Dana. I saw some fighter saying, fuck Newsom for getting involved. Fuck all these people. How dare you take this away from me? It's all I had. And it's like, if this is all you've got, you know, maybe work on yourself in this time because we've got other things going on. It's interesting in this sense, which is this was, I guess, brought to light from the New York Times, which said that they thought it was the Tai Chi Palace and they had good authority to claim that. And we had people from the UFC that weren't really confirming or denying it. They were just kind of like, no. But meanwhile, they had like people who I guess were local authorities, like a sheriff that was just like, oh, yeah, there's definitely a fight happening here. Yeah. Well, you know, oops. So when Dana's basically saying like, all these scumbags are lying. When they took this away from him and he had to eat crow with Brett Okamoto, there's an interesting moment that happened in that telling, which is he said, Fight Island's still going to happen. It's a real thing. So Tai Chi Palace apparently is out because California. So it makes you wonder, did the mouse and did maybe ESPN say, listen, not in California, go to your fuck island and do it there. And if you go there, then I guess we really can't tell you not to. But if you say, we're not going to tell you where it is, and then we say, well, we think we know where it is. It's here, right? And you go, and you go, okay, cool. So you don't have a commission. Oh, you got a shitty commission to pass that one through. Okay. Begs the question, why do you even need commissions then? I mean, what's the point? If you're just going to sidestep it, what point does the California Athletic Commission even provide for you? Your ringside folk telling you don't do this. Basically every other person saying don't do this. And yet you're trying to make yourself out to be the good guy in this situation. But if you go to the island, and Dana seems to be suggesting that it's coming sooner than later, he just says, I need a fucking month. So it begs the question, did the mouse say, if you get the island, you can do what you want? Because I think that's where they left it. Or at least that's Dana's interpretation, which we've proven. Who fucking knows how close to reality that even is? But Dana went out of his way, Kev, and this is one of my favorite things in the world. He said that him and Ari Emanuel, the Ari Gold dude from Endeavor, they basically came up with this idea of doing it on Fight Island. And baby, you're right. If Dana White held a cell phone and was suddenly a medical examiner himself, then maybe few people would have issues with it. But Dana was saying, don't worry, it's safe. It's going to be fucking safe. It's going to be safe. Well, how's it safe? Don't worry about it. Just will be.
I was impressed by his artful dodgery, but I will point out for Dana, this to me was a record moment where he just gave up. It felt like he fought really hard until a few days ago. Then as soon as it got really difficult, it's like, well, fuck it. Everybody go home. I really thought it was just going to happen in the tough fight house, but that thing probably has viruses for other reasons they can't go back to right now.
You know what it is? Dana gets to the point where they like do an option. They go, could we do it in the tough house? And Dana's like, you don't want to go in the tough house. Some guys have done some things there. Dana, is some guy's code for you? Don't worry about it.
Plus, you could also just kind of tell he might have a few significant others living there from past relationships, not to bring up current lawsuits again. Do you see any road where they make anything happen? Before we reopen world-wise, do you see them being able to get this up ahead of schedule? The NBA is playing horse today, I guess. I haven't seen. I'll have to go.
Did that happen?
I don't know. I got to jump back onto the television. I haven't been focused. So I was watching Baywatch for an hour and a half, which is a teaser for the segment we're going to get to podcast-wise. You can listen to that. You'll see it in the feed. But no, I have not watched it. But do you see any world where fighters are doing anything before this is all cleared?
Dana says a month. I will say Darren Till says, I'll fucking fight on Fight Island. And then immediately followed up by saying he doesn't think it's going to be for at least 3 months, which honestly is weirdly the more prophetic estimation on all of this. Fight Island is a whole thing into itself. Everybody kept saying, why don't you just do this on international waters where no one can touch you? And I guess that's the question. I don't know, man. Dana's really, really hell-bent on saying he wants to be first back. And I just thought it was amazing to see the WWE, which felt like it got away with more. And there's somebody who was on the internet, or a few people saying, like, I can't believe you guys are not giving the WWE as much shit as you give Dana. And I was like, well, there's a difference. Vince kept his mouth shut. Dana famously did not. That doesn't mean they don't believe the same thing. It's just Vince knows how to play the game better. And guess what? Apparently the WWE is going to resume live tapings, albeit in their performance center, isolated from everybody else. Maybe a difference that's important to note is that when they do these matches, there's a much lower ability to see massive amounts of blood exchanged at the very end of it. Not to say it's not contagious, because we found that it can be very contagious just given a number of things. But it is interesting to note that when the WWE had to admit the other day that they had one positive test result from this, and it was from their closed off tapings. You know, in some ways, maybe Newsom did the UFC a favor, because I will tell you my favorite headline came from The Athletic that said, UFC no longer to intelligently defend itself, taps out. Thought that was hilarious.
Nice headline points.
So I don't know.
Nice headline points to the MMA team over there. I don't see it. I think it's going to be months before there's a market and an infrastructure, because it's just so difficult right now. And I'm sure he heard from his buddy, yeah, go ahead, you can do this. And then simultaneously you'll hear the president saying governors need to step up and make these decisions. And there's some real truth to that part. Governors get to step up and make decisions, and they're not going to favor Dana here. It's not going to be good, especially California. It's like, I can't even believe that's where you started. They must have tried, and he's so uncreative. They must have been like, well, we tried tribal lands again. Shit, it worked for us in the 90s. What happened, man?
I would tell you this. It would be interesting to see. God damn it. It'll be interesting to see how crowds come back, because it's not assumed. I mean, yeah, sure, you can have an event, but are you going to have half capacity? And that's the new norm for a little bit. What's normal? Is this a whole thing? I feel like my whole concept on this is, if you're going to do Fight Island, because Dana says that it's going to be essentially a place where they can train and fight and kind of live. So when he's saying he's building the infrastructure, I mean, you brought up the Fire Island example, and this is getting achingly close. Like, if a fighter gets there and they're served just a single slice of bologna.
I disagree. I don't think we're quite close. People haven't booked flights anywhere yet. Jacare's not like sending Instagram photos of him sleeping on a cot outside. That would be amazing, but it hasn't happened yet.
Hey, don't challenge them. But what I'm saying is, if that's the case and we go back to the normal and say we get some crowds, I say make Fight Island a fucking series. I would watch that. That's probably way better than Dana White's Contender Series. Dana White's Fight Island? Fuck yeah. Give me that.
Everything's better on an island.
Hopefully you get everything.
Learn from the Bachelor franchise to bring up a titan in the industry.
Wow. I didn't know there was an island.
They have Bachelor in Paradise.
Oh, right.
God, Raph, don't anger me right here on a Sunday. This is God's day. Happy Easter, everyone. Well, the long and short of it is, I would listen to our podcast, if anything, because sometimes we're funny right. We're always funny, but it's fun to be funny right, and we were about this. We knew it wasn't happening, and that is because we also read scientific-like articles about situations, which famously would contrast with the UFC's stance on this podcast, calling us unprofessional. Yeah. So thank you. Appreciate it again. We're going to host Fight Island. Well, it's more like Fight Tribe stuff. I'm working out guys, there's no fights, it turns out. It's like, yeah. No, that will do it for our Dana White series gloating. Fight Island is canceled. That's it for Verbal Tap. Tune in for our bonus episode this week. I am Kevin. Thank you for listening.
Good night and good fight.
The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is... Please note, the new number is